Cease this nonsense right now. Richard Blackwood's commanding voice resonated throughout the grand estate. He appeared at the living room doorway, his hands balled into fists, witnessing a scene that ignited his fury instantly. His 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, sat in a mobility chair at the room's center, displaying her first genuine happiness in half a year. Beside her, Andre Silva, the chauffeur employed merely 3 weeks prior, moved gracefully to Brazilian melody streaming from his mobile device. The 32-year-old man gently clasped the child's hand, rotating slowly around her chair as she applauded with pure delight, a joy Richard hadn't witnessed since the tragic incident. "What exactly are you attempting with my child?" Richard charged toward Andre, who immediately ceased his movement and released Sophia's hand. The girl's radiant expression disappeared, replaced by bewilderment and terror. Andre maintained his composure, raising his palms in a gesture of peace. "Sir, allow me to clarify the situation," Andre began calmly. "Clarify?" Richard cut him off, his tone dripping with outrage. "Your role is transportation, not this, whatever this performance is." He waved angrily at the still-playing phone. "Silence that device immediately." Sophia began weeping quietly as Andre swiftly grabbed his phone to stop the music. The resulting silence felt oppressive. Richard glanced between his daughter and Andre, feeling an inexplicable tightness in his chest. "Papa, please," Sophia whispered, her voice fragile and defeated. "Andre was simply showing me how to move like other children." "Movement is impossible for you," Richard erupted, the words escaping before he could restrain them. "You're confined to that chair, Sophia. Accepting this reality sooner will serve you better." Andre's expression flickered slightly, yet he remained quiet. His eyes held something beyond anger or fear, a profound comprehension that Richard couldn't identify. The driver seemed to understand precisely the type of anguish that provoked such reactions. "Sir," Andre spoke softly, his voice carrying a gentle accent Richard had previously overlooked. "Might we have a private conversation?" "There's nothing requiring discussion," Richard responded sharply. "Collect your belongings. Your employment is terminated." Andre nodded deliberately, but before departing, he gazed at Sophia once more. "Remember our butterfly conversation, little one. Some soar differently, yet they still take flight." As Andre moved toward the exit, Richard observed something unsettling. The man appeared neither shocked nor frantic, as expected from someone facing job loss. His movements carried tranquility, as though he possessed knowledge Richard lacked. Sophia's tears continued as Richard knelt beside her chair, attempting comfort. Yet his words felt hollow even to himself. "Why did you dismiss him?" Sophia asked through her sobs. "He helped me feel ordinary again." Richard struggled for an answer. During the 6 months since the accident left Sophia paralyzed below the waist, he had employed the finest physical therapists, psychologists, and specialists wealth could purchase. None had managed to evoke a sincere smile from his daughter until Andre's arrival. Watching Sophia dry her tears, Richard questioned whether he had committed a grave error. Something about the driver seemed incongruent, triggering warnings in his analytical mind, though not the type he had anticipated. 3 days following the dismissal, the Blackwood estate had seemingly returned to its quiet, frigid normalcy. Richard immersed himself in work, convincing himself of his correct decision. He couldn't permit strangers to exploit his daughter's fragility. However, Sophia resisted his plan for restoration. The girl refused to exit her room, rejected her meals, and wept whenever car sounds echoed from the driveway, hoping for Andre's return. The physical therapist Richard hired reported complete defiance. She simply declined participation in any activities. "Papa, why hasn't Andre returned?" Sophia inquired for the 10th time that morning, her tears staining her pillowcase. "We've discussed this, darling. He wasn't suitable for our household," Richard replied, adjusting his necktie before the mirror. The meeting with Japanese investors couldn't be delayed, despite domestic turmoil. "But he comprehended me," Sophia murmured, turning toward the wall. Meanwhile, across town, Andre Silva sat at his modest kitchen table, calmly working on a laptop that seemed inconsistent with his simple apartment. The screen displayed emails in English, French, and Portuguese, correspondence no ordinary driver should maintain. His phone chimed. Dr. Silva, the voice spoke in French. The university seeks confirmation of your availability for next week's neuroplasticity lecture. I must postpone it briefly. Andre responded in the same language, his gaze never leaving the photo he had discreetly captured of Sophia during their sessions. I have a particular case requiring attention. Richard had never properly investigated Andre Silva's background. Had he done so, he would have discovered that his hired driver possessed a Ph.D. in neuroscience from the Sorbonne, specialized in music and movement therapy for children with neurological trauma, and had abandoned a promising Parisian academic career following personal tragedy. Richard's assistant, James, entered the office with a concerned expression. "Say, I must report something unusual about the driver you terminated." He didn't contest a dismissal, request references, or appear desperate whatsoever. Richard frowned. Andre's calm reaction had indeed troubled him initially. Perhaps he secured alternative employment, Richard suggested. "That's just it, sir. My investigation revealed he possesses advanced academic credentials, speaks 4 languages, and has experience working with special needs children in European hospitals." Richard's stomach clenched. Why wasn't I informed previously? Because you didn't request a comprehensive background check. You only needed a driver. That afternoon, Richard returned home early to find Sophia unchanged, motionless on a bed, gazing through the window while whispering something. "Who are you addressing, sweetheart?" he asked, approaching her. "The butterflies," Sophia replied without turning. "Andre taught me that some fly differently, yet they still soar, like me." Richard felt his chest constrict. These were Andre's final words to Sophia before leaving. Later, after Sophia slept, Richard found himself in the garage where Andre once cleaned the car while humming softly. The space stood empty and silent, yet something captured his attention. On the car seat, Andre had left a small leather portfolio. Richard opened the portfolio, expecting personal documents. Instead, he discovered medical articles on childhood paralysis, music therapy techniques, and detailed handwritten notes labeled SBK, Sophia Blackwood's initials. The notes were thorough, professional, revealing knowledge of Sophia's condition far beyond any driver's scope. Exercise diagrams, adapted musical progressions, and a months-long treatment plan filled the pages. At the portfolio's bottom, Richard found a faded photograph, a young man in a white coat beside a blonde woman in a hospital bed, both smiling. The woman possessed Sophia's blue eyes. It was Elena, his wife, who had perished in the accident that paralyzed Sophia. The photo was dated 6 years ago at a Paris hospital. On the reverse, a French note read, "Dr. Andre Silva, pediatric neurological trauma specialist, treatment of Elena Blackwood." Richard dropped the photograph, his hands trembling. Andre wasn't merely a skilled driver who had coincidentally appeared in his life. He had known Elena. He had treated his wife. Now, 6 years later, he had mysteriously emerged to work in his home precisely when Sophia needed help most. The next morning, Richard couldn't focus on meetings. Elena's photograph with Andre pounded in his mind like an unanswered riddle. He canceled appointments and instructed James to hire a private investigation firm immediately. "I want everything from Andre Silva. Every document, every position, every breath is taken in 15 years. Meanwhile, Sophia's condition worsened. She refused food, wouldn't speak to anyone, and developed an unexplained low fever. The physical therapist reported that the girl had simply closed her eyes during the entire session, as though she had surrendered completely. "It's as if she's lost her will to live," murmured Dr. Peterson, the family pediatrician, after examining Sophia. "Sometimes traumatized children develop specific emotional attachments. When these connections are abruptly severed." "Are you implying that my daughter is ill because I terminated a driver?" Richard interrupted, his voice heavy with disbelief and irritation. "I'm suggesting you may have underestimated this person's importance in her recovery." That afternoon, the agency's report arrived via encrypted email. Richard locked himself in his office and began reading, his certainties crumbling page by page. Andre Silva had graduated from the University of Sao Paulo with a medical degree, specialized in pediatric neurology in France, and worked for 6 years at the Necker-Enfants Malades Hospital in Paris, the same hospital where Elena had been treated during a research stint. But there was more. Andre had lost his own daughter in a car accident 3 years ago. Luna Silva, age 5, had died in circumstances similar to those that left Sophia paralyzed. After the tragedy, Andre abandoned traditional medicine and began developing unconventional therapy techniques through music and movement for traumatized children. The report included scientific articles published by Andre, citations in international medical journals, and something that chilled Richard's blood: an interview he had given to a French newspaper 2 years earlier, mentioning his intention to find other children like Luna and offer them a second chance at happiness. Richard dialed Andre's number. After several rings, a calm voice answered. "I know you've discovered my identity," Andre said without waiting for a greeting. "Why didn't you reveal this from the beginning?" Richard asked, his voice betraying confusion and anger. "Because men like you don't hire former doctors as drivers. You employ chauffeurs. Sophia needed someone who could remain near without raising suspicion or expectations." "Suspicions? What game are you playing with my family?" Andre sighed deeply. "So, your wife Elena came to me 6 months before the accident. She was researching alternative treatment for childhood paralysis because doctors had already diagnosed a genetic risk during her pregnancy that could affect Sophia's future." Richard felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. "That's impossible. Sophia was born perfectly healthy." "She was. But Elena knew there was a genetic risk. She was preparing a preventive treatment plan in case something happened. She asked me to promise that if Sophia ever needed it, I would do everything in my power to help her." Andre's words echoed in the silent office like confession, rewriting the entire history Richard thought he knew. "You're lying," Richard muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's in her will, sir. In the section your lawyers probably classified as a worried pregnant woman's delusions. Elena left specific instructions on how Sophia should be treated in the event of paralysis." Richard quickly opened Elena's digital files on his computer. There, on page 17, was a section he had completely overlooked. "In the event of neurological trauma or paralysis involving our daughter Sophia, I recommend contacting Dr. Andre Silva, a specialist in unconventional therapy. His methods may seem unorthodox, but they work where traditional medicine fails." "My God," Richard whispered, dropping the phone. James appeared at the door, carrying a folder of documents. "Sir, there's something you need to see. I found records of payments your wife made to a clinic in Paris. Monthly payments that continued automatically debiting from a joint account until last month." Richard took the documents with trembling hands. Elena had been funding a children's rehabilitation clinic all these years, a clinic where Andre worked as a consultant. "He's been monitoring us," Richard muttered. "Waiting." "Not monitoring, sir," James corrected gently. "Waiting to be needed." Richard realized the extent of his arrogance. He had humiliatingly fired the only man in the world his wife had specifically chosen to care for Sophia. He had treated as an opportunist a doctor who had abandoned a brilliant career to fulfill a promise made to a deceased woman. Richard called Andre again. "I need you to return." "That's not how this works," Andre replied calmly. "I'm not an employee you can dismiss and rehire at your convenience. I'm a doctor who made a promise." "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to stop trying to control your daughter's healing and start participating in it. I want you to admit that you don't know what's best for Sophia. And I want you to apologize, not to me, but to her." Richard swallowed his pride like a bitter pill. "And if I do that, then maybe Sophia still has a chance at happiness." A notification appeared on Richard's phone, a text from an unknown number. "Sophia asked me to send this to you." It was a 3-minute video. In it, Sophia appeared sitting in her wheelchair in what looked like a doctor's office, smiling as she moved her arms in sync with soft music. Her legs, though immobile, swayed slightly to the rhythm. Andre appeared briefly in the corner, guiding her movements with infinite patience. The accompanying message was devastating in its simplicity. "She recorded this last week when she still believed you loved her more than your own pride." Richard realized he had lost much more than an employee. He had lost his daughter's trust. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure he could regain what he had destroyed with his arrogance and prejudice. Richard drove to Andre's apartment unannounced, the investigation report folded in his trembling hand. He found Andre sitting on the balcony, reading a French book as if expecting this visit. "You planned all of this," Richard said bluntly, climbing the steps. From day one. Andre calmly closed the book and gestured to the chair beside him. Sit down, sir. It's time we talk like two men who love the same child. No, Richard exploded. You lied about your identity. You manipulated my family. You used my wife's memory to fulfill a promise I made to her. Andre interrupted, his voice firm. A promise you never knew she asked me to make. Richard threw the report on the table between them. I know everything about Luna, your daughter. About how you abandoned medicine after she died. About how you've been using other children to try to compensate for your loss. Andre's face twitched slightly, but he didn't deny it. You're right about one thing. Every child I help brings Luna back for a few moments. But if you think that diminishes my love for Sophia, you're very mistaken. Andre picked up a yellowed letter from the table. Your wife came to me because she knew you would never accept unconventional methods. Elena understood your need to control everything, to have scientific answers to emotional problems. She asked me to promise that if anything happened to Sophia, I would find a way to be there, even if it meant lying about who I really was. Andre handed him the letter. Elena wrote this for you, but asked me to give it to you only when the time came. Richard immediately recognized his wife's handwriting. With trembling hands, he opened the letter and read, Richard, if Andre is giving you this letter, it means our daughter needs him and you are fighting it. Stop trying to fix Sophia and start loving her for who she is. Let Andre help her. He lost his own daughter, but he can save ours. Tears began rolling down Richard's cheeks. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because you weren't ready to hear it. You needed to see Sophia smile again first to understand that not everything can be controlled or bought. Richard's phone rang. It was Carla, the nurse, her voice filled with panic. Sir, you need to come home immediately. Sophia, she's out of bed. She's trying to walk on her own and refuses to stop until Andre returns. Richard felt his world collapse for the second time that month. I'm going home, he said to Andre. You're coming with me. Not as your employee, Andre replied firmly. As your daughter's doctor, as the man your wife chose to care for her, and as someone who will no longer accept being treated as inferior for trying to save your family. On the way back, Richard finally asked a question that had been hammering in his head. What do you really want from me? I want you to stop seeing my color before you see my competence. I want you to stop thinking that because I'm Brazilian and was driving your car, I can't be qualified to care for your daughter. And I want you to admit that you spent 6 months paying the world's best specialist, but you fired the only one who really worked because he didn't look like what you expected a doctor to look like. When they arrived at the mansion, they found Sophia in the hallway, leaning on her wheelchair but with her feet on the floor, trying to take small steps. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. Sophia. Richard ran toward her, but she raised her hand. No, Papa, I have to show Andre that I did it. I have to show him that I didn't give up. Andre approached slowly and knelt to the girl's height. I always knew you could do it, little butterfly, but you don't have to hurt yourself to prove it to me. Will you come back? Sophia asked, her voice small and hopeful. Andre looked at Richard, who finally understood that this wasn't about hiring an employee. It was about accepting help. It was about swallowing his pride. It was about admitting that he had judged an extraordinary man by his most superficial characteristics. Andre, Richard said, his voice breaking, I don't know how to apologize for what I did. I don't know how to make up for my prejudice, my arrogance. But if there's still a chance, I'd like you to come back. Not as a driver. As a doctor my wife chose. As a person who made my daughter smile again. Andre smiled for the first time since being fired. Only if you promise me one thing. Anything. The next time I teach Sophia to dance, you'll dance with her too. Because she needs a father, not just a doctor. The Blackwood Mansion had been completely transformed. The Different Butterflies Project served dozens of children with disabilities, created through a partnership between Richard Blackwood and Dr. Andre Silva. Sophia, now 10 years old, walked with crutches and danced regularly. Her laughter echoed through the halls of the house that had been transformed into a center of hope. Dad, today we're going to teach the new girl how to dance, Sophia announced as she entered the office. She's afraid, but I'll show her that dancing in a chair is beautiful too. Richard smiled, remembering when he thought it was impossible for someone in a wheelchair to dance. Andre had become much more than a doctor. He was a brother Richard never knew he needed. During meetings with investors, Richard made a point of telling the truth. I almost destroyed my daughter's only chance at happiness because I judged an extraordinary doctor by the color of his skin. My prejudice almost cost Sophia her happiness. The graduation ceremony for the first class took place in the main hall. 23 children had completed the program. Sophia took the stage with her crutches and danced a routine she had choreographed herself. 2 years ago, I thought I would never be happy, she said into the microphone. Today, I know that being different doesn't mean you're less special. It means you fly in your own unique way. Andre watched, moved, remembering his first words, Sophia. Some butterflies fly differently, but they still fly. Richard had lost friends from his elite circle who didn't accept his partnership with a black man, but he gained a real family and a purpose in life. I learned that prejudice is not just injustice against others, he said in a national interview. It's a prison we build for ourselves. When I finally saw Andre for who he really was, I didn't just save my daughter, I saved myself. The project served 300 families annually. Andre published his methodology free of charge for doctors worldwide. Richard discovered that building lives was more rewarding than building fortunes. The mansion that had been a silent tomb now pulsed with music and hope. Richard proved that the best response to prejudice is to transform it into bridges to a better world.